Hi, welcome to my channel Takniki Gyan Guru. Today we will discuss Amazon Web Services, also called AWS. So, what is AWS? So, AWS is a cloud provider who will help you to provide the cloud services, right? In the cloud services, they have wide range of services like networking, machine learning, analytics, database, application development platform, or the DevOps, container platform, or some networking services, right? A storage, compute power also, right? So these are the services they provide. Like how they do it, basically they have the big data centers in different geographic locations, like different regions. Like in Mumbai we have one the data center for Amazon, or the US, UK, Europe, Singapore. In different region they have different big data centers, right? So once you create your resources, they will you have to choose in which region, which location, which region you have to create your infrastructure. In that location it will be created in automated fashion, and then all these things will be managed by uh, the AWS. Also, you can configure, like if some data center is down or something, right? You can create the ski level or high available infrastructure where somewhere is down. It will give you service from other region or locations. So that is the power of Amazon or the cloud, right? So these resources will be provided by the AWS. That is the AWS, Amazon Web Services, right? That infrastructure you need not to manage. All the infrastructure will be managed in the data center. The admin guy, network guy will create the infrastructure for you. In the backend they have lot of management, right? And they manage the data centers, manage the compute, everything. A lot of complexity is there. So in the cloud you just need to pay for your service. You just pay your service, then you can use the infrastructure. So some popular services we will talk about. One is the compute service. In the compute service we have a lot of different services, like the EC2. This is the very popular services most of the people use. This is the elastic compute cloud. That is basically a virtual machine, right? You have to create virtual machine so that you can deploy your application, you can configure it, you can stop it, start it, stop it, you can destroy it, you can create another virtual machine, either it Linux, Windows, or different operating system. You can use it, right? Also it has some different series, like you know what type of EC2 machine you want to create, or what size of the machines. So majorly the micro series has the free, right? Micro, but there are different medium, large server EC2 machine are costly. So it has some series like micro, uh, you know um, EC2, or M series, A series. Lot of series are available. Based on series you can, it has some CPU, like in micro it has one CPU, two memory, RAM, 2 GB RAM, or two CPU, or 6 or 8 GB memory. This way you can choose your, as per your requirement, you can choose your size series, right? For the elastic compute cloud, that is called EC2. So the compute, right? In the compute you can create your virtual machine based on your requirement. Another one is the AWS Lambda function. So AWS Lambda function is basically the serverless. It called serverless. What is server? In EC2 machine you can create, you can develop your code. Either you can in Visual Studio, Visual Code, you install it, develop code, also deploy it into the same server, right? You can do anything. But the Lambda server is, you created your code, right, in Java or C Sharp or Node.js, React.js, right? Or not React.js, but the server execution code. React is the front end code, right? The Node.js, or the Python code. So these code, C sharp code you want to execute, right? So these code can be executed without your infrastructure. You just put your code into the Lambda function, the Lambda services. It will automatically, give you some, maybe if you are deploying the APIs, it will give you some URL to, access your API from the Lambda function. Or you can create some, different schedulers or something you can create. Basically, it is serverless. Your code will be execute inside the Lambda function, right? These are the two compute services. Apart from this, you can see the light sail. It is similar to EC2, but it is very small, virtual machine. Very, you can't do anything, right? Some limitations are there in the light sail, but it is cheaper than the EC2. The batch is also, if you want to schedule or continuously work your, code, right? Then in that case you can create a scheduler, right? Or scheduler, and to execute your code will be executed in the back end. So that execution will be done through batch. Auto scaling is basically, as I said it, right? So your application is deployed into some EC2 box. Now, based on load, your, suppose currently your people are hitting your application, and your EC2 box is occupying around 40% load is there, right? Utilizing the memory, CPUs, 40%. But you want, if there are huge load into your EC2 box, it should automatically create another EC2 box to, you know to absorb this load, right? Or it should work correctly. So how it can be done? You can, create some auto scaling group, or you can configure some auto scaling group. Says if your machine is utilizing more than 80% CPU or memory, then we should create different virtual machine to serve your client request, right? So your application should not be down. That is called auto scaling. That, when we will create the infrastructure for auto scaling, when configure, we will definitely discuss more about it. And spot instance is also the EC2, similar to EC2 virtual machine, but the EC2 is the on demand, right? So you have taken, nobody can access it, you can access it, and you can, until you release, it will not, release, right? It is on demand, you can pay as you go. But the spot instance is for some development, you want the cheaper machines, right? So you can, use the EC2 machine, but the problem is it will give you 2 minutes, right? To, to release this machine. If somebody else need this machines, because there are a lot of loads, so the Amazon will pull up this machine in 2 minutes. It will give you some notification that your instance will go, please, take the backups or whatever you can do, right? So it will go on. So we can't use this spot instance production, but definitely in development environment and any environment there where we can see, okay, we don't have some backups or some R&D working going on or something is going on, then in that case we can use the spot instance, right? Similar spot instance with auto scaling or something, right? Where it is the spot instance with some, we can mix and match, right? In, QA or test environment, where we say that we have the spot instance, also the EC2. So because we don't have some unrealistic load, right? Peak load or down and up, because we know how to, when to access this load, right? To mix of a spot instance and the EC2 we can use in top of that, we have to use auto scaling, right? To make our environment cheaper. The storage services, in the storage we have a lot of storage services like Amazon S3, where we, this simple storage service where we can create our folders. Similar to folder, we call is buckets, right? S3 buckets, where we can put our objects like the files folders, or any files like the MP3, any kind of files you have, you can zip it and push it into your storage, right? um, That is basically a different buckets folder system, and that can be accessed through URL also. And you can directly go and upload your files, folders on any other objects, XML file, your application. You can store for storage purpose. You can use it, right? And the Amazon EBS, elastic block storage. Block storage is basically comes within the EC2 instance, so you can't detach or attach it. Is still it is comes with the EC2 instance. So block storage basically give you some storage so that you can install your applications or whatever, and that storage you can use inside the EC2 machine. You can't access into somewhere else. Also, you can say we have the glaciers basically for archiving your storage. Like now you are not using it, you want to put into somewhere where we are not, sometimes in a year or month or after 2 months you are, you know that it is, you can archive it. So you can archive those storage or files into glaciers. That will be cheaper in cost, right? Also the EFS is the elastic file system, where if you want to increase your EC2 machine, you want to increase some storage, right? And you want to access somewhere else also, right? Similar to the shareable storage, right? So EFS is the place, the service where you can increase your also this will be not into EC2 instance. If your EC2 instance is gone, or your elastic bucket will also gone, right? So EFS is the uh, storage that will be exist in different location, right? You can put in different location and access into your EC2. A database service is like, you have the database like SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, like. So that the RDS is basically called platform as a service, right? Or in the EC2 boxes is also infrastructure as a code, right? Lambda function is platform as a service, correct? Um, and see, S3 is a, you can say, the software as a service, right? So you have the URL, you can do, you don't need to configure or manage something, right? uh, and RDS, relational database service, where you can put only relational database service. So you can't use NoSQL, right? Or the NoSQL, you can't use it here. All the RDBMS data will be used here, right? And it is, you can create your database, and it will not have any infrastructure. If you want to install the SQL Server, MySQL in virtual machine, then in that case you can use EC2. But it is the service, then it will create the service. You can directly go, you can configure, and then directly you can use MySQL, Postgres from the cloud only. And Amazon DynamoDB is fully managed NoSQL database service, right? Similarly, the Aurora and DocumentDB. DocumentDB is basically used for documentation. So if you can use your document, store or manage your documents using the DocumentDB, and Aurora is for the Postgres kind of database, right? The NoSQL, Postgres or MongoDB, NoSQL kind of database, right? So different kind of database, maybe the relational database for RDS, Amazon DynamoDB, for NoSQL like Postgres, MongoDB, NoSQL, right? And DocumentDB for documentation, for document. More services like networking. In the networking section, you can also use the BPC is a logical isolation of your the network, right? Like virtual network basically. What is virtual network? Now you can see, now you are creating a virtual network where you have to define how many IP addresses you want to publish, right? So suppose you say 172.1.1.0/28, right? So how many resource 20 resource will be given to you, right? Like 4 or 16 IP address it will give you. Even though 4 or 16, it will reserve some of the IP address, right? So those, logical group of IP addresses you can define into the BPC, right? So that BPC is required whenever you create the EC2 machines, right? You need to create the virtual this BPC and subnets, right? In the BPC you have to create the subnet. In the subnet you divide your, your IP addresses in different parts, small part. You can have the bigger IP address into the BPC. Inside the BPC you have the small chunk of IP address called subnets, right? This way you need to define the BPC, virtual private cloud. And then AWS Elastic Load Balancer. Load Balancer is when, when you create some, mm, it is for a highly available, right? Highly available means it will divide or incoming traffic to different cloud services. Like suppose, you have one EC2 machine, all these requests will come to your EC2. But if you want to, create multiple EC2 instance, and the load balancer will check the where the load is come, right? It will, have the algorithm will distribute your request from different EC2 instance based on the load, right? So it will divide the load to different EC2 instance or containers, right? Based on the load. So that is the elastic load balancer. It has different load balancer, like classic load balancer or application load balancer, you know. So these kind of load balancer we have in AWS. We'll talk about later once we have the demo. Also, the Route 53, it is for the DNS management. So once you have the load balancer, you want to, publish to the end user, right? So they don't want to, directly access to load balancer. They want to have some DNS like www.google.com, www.amazon.com, right? So those domain name would be created here, and connect to your load balancer or EC2 machines. Also, if you already have the domain name, you can, connect through the Route 53, right? BPC pairing is also right. If you have two different BPC, like in one of the BPC you have the application running, in one of the BPC, all the application like .NET application, Java, whatever application you have, you deploy it. Another BPC you have deploy, suppose your database, right? So both that BPC won't connect, right? It is by default it won't connect, so it will not talk to each other. So to connect and talk to each other, you need to create a BPC pairing or transit gateway. Both are same, but different in features, right? So it will also, BPC will connect one to one, transit gateway will one to many, right? So they have a lot of features we'll talk about later. If you need more detail, just comment me. I'll give you the details. Next, security and identity. Security and identity basically, you manage the security in the cloud. It has different flavors of new security in AWS. One of the security and identity is identity and access management. What is it is? What it is? It is basically it will, you can create the user, you can create the role, you can create the policies. In the policies it will say what are the access you can provide, and this policy will be attached to some roles, and roles will give attached to some users, right? So that user can access to whatever resource they have, right? And that user management, right? User and identity, you can create a user, you can give access to that user, you can create the roles, you can create the policies. All these things will be done into the IAM. It is also called AWS IAM, right? And the AWS key management services, using key management service, help you to create and control encryption key used to encrypt, right? So key management system is basically encrypt your your sensitive data, right? So you have the sensitive data, you want to publish it by plain text, you want to encrypt and decrypt later, so that those encryptions and will be done, and control those encryptions methodologies will be done through the KMS, right? And also we have the AWS sealed Shield basically, protect your infrastructure through DDoS attack, like thousands of attacks, coming, through hack your system, right? So it will automatically check whether it is the DDoS attack or not. So if it DDoS attack, it will save you from the DDoS attack. DDoS attack is basically, I said, some hackers give you the thousands of requests in the same time, right? Per second it will give you, so your system will be down in that case. So it will automatically detect same, same location, and it will coming request multiple time. So a lot of algorithm he has, and based on the algorithm, it will identify the risk of the DDoS, and mitigate those risks. And AWS WAF is, web application firewalls. So we can, create the firewall rules and all those things. Apart from this, we can whitelist or blacklist the IP addresses. Like, do not want to, give access to these people, these IP addresses. I know these are IP addresses do the phishing, so I can block those IP addresses from the web, right? Or I can whitelist. Okay, suppose these are some of the people, some of the IP address, they can access my infrastructure, so I can whitelist using the web, right? Secret manager, again, you can create secrets against your, and you can use this secret from your APIs, somewhere from you can use this secret, so that you don't need to use user ID and passwords, right? So that secret will work for you. Next, development and management tools, like the CloudFormation template is one of the development tool where you can create the infrastructure. As we said, we discussed in Terraform section, where Terraform create the infrastructure for multi-cloud, but the CloudFormation template can create infrastructure only for the cloud, AWS, right? It is AWS native service. That's why it creates the infrastructure for only the, the AWS. So that is called CloudFormation template. So that will create the infrastructure for AWS only. Elastic Beanstalk, it is service for deploying and managing applications. So basically, it is also a PaaS-based services where you have the application like .NET, Java. It is front-end application, right? It is not the API or something. You can deploy the API also, but it is basically for the front-end applications like Java, .NET, on React application. You can directly go and deploy your application to the Elastic Beanstalk, right? To develop and deploy directly into this, and it will give you some URL. Through the URL, you can get access to your application, right? System manager is the, system manager is the, service where you can control all your EC2 machines, your services. Where if you want to, patch your services, your applications, your systems, or you want to install some patches, or if you want to run your script in some of the services, dev environment somewhere, so you can do that. You can start stop machines. That can also be done through the system manager, right? It is for the support people who can manage your infrastructure. Ops works is also work as a DevOps, like you can create the infrastructure in automated fashion using Chef, right? It's used in the backend Chef to create infrastructure. You deploy your application into the infrastructure. You can configure your infrastructure also as well for your, as per your application requirement. Cloud9 is also a development environment. You can develop your code, any .NET, Java, development environment it is. You can just build, deploy, and run your code here. Container service is basically you can, deploy your you can create the infrastructure, container infrastructure, and deploy your container into this. So one of the containers, Amazon, Elastic Container Service. The Elastic Container Service is a fully managed container operator service where the Docker container can run, right? You can you deploy your container over here using the Elastic Container Service. One of the service it has, right? You can, manage, scale your containers through the ECS. Also, the It has the Kubernetes, the plain container service in AWS, and the AWS EKS is the elastic Kubernetes service that has the Kubernetes, the fully managed Kubernetes service in AWS. So you can deploy, manage, and scale containerized applications. There are a lot of features you have, and you have a lot of control over the ECS, right? So you can manage a lot of things into EKS. A lot of feature you have the Kubernetes and on-prem. Similarly, the EKS and the AWS, right? The ECR is Elastic Container Registry, where when you create your build your code and then create an image, that image you can store into ECR, and then when you are deploying your application, you can pull your image from ECR and deploy either in ECS or EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Services, right? Step function is basically the workflow. It has workflow. If you have multiple APIs in Node.js or Python into your, you create this APIs into either into the Kubernetes, ECS, or Lambda function, right? So now if you want to, once one API finished, it should move to another API to run. If successfully run, then move to another API. If failed one of the API, then it should move to another API, right? Similar is this kind of new workflow if you want to create, then step function will help you to do that. Forget is one of the feature for EKS and ECS, that when you create the EKS, you need to create nodes, right? Or ECS, you can need to create nodes. Node is basically EC2 machines, right? The EC2 machine is basically when you create multiple node, multiple masters. So you should EC2 machines needs to be created in the backend, where the Kubernetes controller or required thing will be some cluster will be installed, nodes will be installed, right? So all these infrastructure will be created through EKS, EC2 machine in the backend. But Fargate is one of the you know AWS. There is no infrastructure, right? That is called serverless. We can say Fargate. So you can use the Fargate. You need not to use the EC2 machine in the backend. It will be more cheaper than the EC2. That we'll discuss later when we create the EKS. More services, the content delivery network. The CDN is basically, suppose you are deploying some applications, right? So you have some data, don't want to put into server, right? You want to put somewhere, you can cached from, the like your images, your CSS, right? Or some videos. It should not go to the server, it should directly come from the cache, right? So that your application should be more faster than the database or some server location. That is the cloud front, right? The content delivery network. One of the services, cloud front is basically the network where you the very the service where you can store your static files, right? The video or images or your CSS file, Java scripts, those things will be directly pick up from there and can execute easy, fastly, right? The age location is basically part of the CDN, where you say where the user is coming. It will, the data should come from that location only. You use, your application has somewhere else, has some different location, but some of the services files will be moved to your location. If you enable this age location, that it will directly come all those things from all those files will be come from the edge location near to the user where he is logged in. So it will be too fast. you know Lambda is also the same like the Lambda function. It has the repository or whatever things that will come. All will be get these things or libraries or all those things will come to the near locations. Email messaging and queues. This has three different services like Amazon Simple Queue Services (SQS) is fully managed services. That is basically your message will be in queue, and it will clear one by one in as simple as queue does, right? Another is the simple email services. It is cost effective sending emails, right? So you can send email through the AWS. That's called scalable, email services. We have SNS, simple notification service. It will notify the user using the SNS. Monitoring, we have the Amazon CloudWatch, where we can monitor and observe services by AWS. Like suppose you want to monitor your EC2 machine, your container, or your Lambda function, all the logs will be stored and show you a very good layout, or different dashboard where you can see the memory CPU's details, or different details. If something goes wrong, then it will also give you the details. You can monitor your infrastructure or your services in AWS. CloudTrail is basically, you know it is for the security. So who is logged in, who is logged out, what he is doing in the clouds, all will keep track and show you the details using the cloud trail for the user purpose. uh, Personal health dashboard, you can have the dashboard. You can create your own dashboard to monitor the resources. CloudWatch, again we have discussed. DevOps tool, AWS pipeline, right? Pipeline continuous integration, continuous delivery service, right? You can create CI/CD pipeline here to build and deploy your application. AWS code deploy, it is used for to deploy your code into multiple instances or services, right? Apart from this, we have the CoStar. We'll talk about later. Code commit, you have the repository, source code repository, where you can put your application code or infrastructure code here. Code build is basically used to build your code, right? And this code star is basically combination of these four: code pipeline, code commit, code build, code deploy, and code pipeline. So combination of those. So if you use code star, it will use all four of them. Cost manager is basically used to track your cost. You can visualize, understand, the cost of all services. You can see different location or region, what are the cost, project wise cost, or user wise cost, or resource wise cost. You can analyze and see. AWS budget, you can set the budget of the uh, custom budget. You can set, like, you want to say, okay, for this subscription or this user, I want to set up 5,000 rupees, right? So, and you can you can use the SNS to send an email or something. If the budget is more than 5,000, then it will send you an alert. So you can create a budget for the users, user, and if exit, then you can create the threshold access and all those things. Also, the AWS organization is used to create multiple account, right? So one account for development, one account for QA dev, or multiple account you can create, right? So that will be managed through the organization. We'll talk about later this. Pricing calculator is one of the free services everybody can use and see, check. If you want to create some infrastructure like EC2 machine, and you can check the price of the EC2 machine, the size of the EC2. Based on this, you can check and see that budget is, you can rent those services based on your pricing calculator. You can check your resources, the pricing and all, right? AWS free tier means this is for 12-month free, right? So if you want, you can go and log in and create a new account and use it. AWS free account doesn't mean like you can use any services, right? It has some limitation you need to read out. As I said, micro AWS EC2 micro is free, but it has some charges for a snapshot, some storage, and all those things. You need to keep track on it. And if some your development is done, then you need to release this or destroy this resource, right? So this will end to this video. So if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. If you want to discuss for your own topic. We'll come with the solutions and definitely come with some videos on your suggestions, right? So thank you so much for watching my video.